Re-releases. They're all the rage in today's gaming landscape. We've seen remasters and reimaginings take their place on current hardware. Sometimes they generate new interest, and at other points they simply transition to different consoles. Then there are the gaming compilations. Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, the definitive edition, has just arrived, and that got me thinking about other collections through the years. In a first for this channel, I'm ranking franchise bundles from worst to best. Before we start, let's set some rules for the list. Number 1. Entries here are all physical copies, not bundles included in digital sales. That rules out any deals on Steam and other storefronts. Number 2. We're focusing on entries for newer generations of consoles. That means retro releases are off the table. Number 3. The tiers are based on re-releases rather than compilations of older games. Titles like Sega Ultimate Collection and Rare Replay won't be included here. With that out of the way, let's get ranking. At the bottom of the barrel, it's Silent Hill in F tier. This series suffered a slow, agonising death over the last decade. Some say it began with the Silent Hill HD collection, shambling out in 2012 to dismal critical and commercial reception. For starters, only 2 of the classic games were included, omitting Silent Hill 4 and the original PS1 classic. On top of that, the games were quickly overcome by countless technical glitches and graphical changes that diminished the atmosphere. It was revealed that the source code for Silent Hill 2 and 3 hadn't been preserved, forcing the dev team to work from scratch and botching both titles in the process. The poor handling of this compilation was a major blow for the property, one that would continue spiralling downwards over the next few years. Heading into the lackluster efforts, we have Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection. The man at the centre was by far the most popular character in the long-running series, so it seemed reasonable to bring his adventures together. Unfortunately, the Ezio Collection really doesn't amount to much. It feels like Ubisoft shoved this one out to meet their annual quota. The Hidden Blades were put away that year as the mainline entries transitioned from Syndicate to Origins. Aside from having Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood and Revelations in one place, very little was done to optimise the games or take advantage of newer hardware. Instead, players were treated to more graphical glitches, including some awkward character models that mess with the immersion of the game worlds. Sitting just above Assassin's Creed, but not by much, it's the Prince of Persia trilogy. Consisting of the Sands of Time, Warrior Within and the Two Thrones, this set of 3D releases revitalised the franchise for a new generation. I should know, as I used this release for a retrospective earlier this year. Where the HD trilogy falls down is with its graphical presentation, a detail I missed in my previous critique. Somewhere in its conversion to 7th gen systems, Ubisoft forgot about the art style that made the PS2 originals so absorbing. As a result, we have dopey looking character models and textures that look highly lackluster when placed at a higher resolution. This is one case where going down the full remaster route would have been a better option. To finish D tier, we have a long awaited yet vastly disappointing showing for Nintendo's most popular series. Super Mario 3D AllStars arrived on the Nintendo Switch last year to commemorate the plumber's 35th anniversary. This included Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. None of the games in the pack were outright awful. Instead, it's Nintendo's terrible attitude and poor practices that dragged this compilation through the mud. Putting the title on sale for a limited time to squeeze some money out of the fanbase is bad enough, but how about omitting Super Mario Galaxy 2? It makes no sense to do this when that game is so revered. Super Mario 3D AllStars is a case study in how not to bring together a set of classic games. Here's hoping Nintendo learns their lesson if they decide to do the same for others like Zelda in the future. In C tier, we come to the relatively standard compilations, beginning with Batman Return to Arkham. The series has led the way for the superhero genre, with Asylum and City consistently rated as the best of the bunch. As such, they were re-released on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2016. The collection is competently made and runs well enough on PS4 and Xbox One, but leaving out Batman Arkham Origins was a big mistake in the eyes of fans. The prequel, despite coming from a different developer, is often considered underrated and should have been included. Despite some graphical improvements, the two games are also locked at 30 frames per second. In the end, it isn't much different from the Batman Arkham bundle, which came out 3 years earlier, making it an average collection. Back on the 6th generation of consoles, mascot platformers were a dime a dozen. Few were as popular as Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank, which both stood out as strong exclusives from Naughty Dog and Insomniac games respectively. These IPs saw massive success on the PlayStation 2, but if you try to run them on PS3 via backwards compatibility, you'll run into severe slowdown and other visual glitches. This prompted a full Trilogy conversion for both. The 6 titles hold up well enough, but they don't go beyond being simple ports. Leaving out Ratchet Deadlocked and Jak X is questionable. Despite being spin-offs, they were still well received by fans at the time. Their respective collections were an opportunity to bring all previous outings together, but it didn't turn out that way. The Ratchet & Clank collection is also a bit misleading, using the character models from the PS3 trilogy on the front cover. It may be far less prevalent than it was a decade ago, but BioShock's brand of immersive action still stands out. That's why all 3 mainline entries were bundled into a collection in 2016. The first-person gunplay placed in absorbing worlds still resonates with players today, and being able to play through BioShock, its sequel, and Infinite makes for good value. While the series remains a landmark in the industry, the ports do leave a bit to be desired. On launch, issues with technical performance held the collection back from higher status. Patches were issued and the collection sold well enough, but Blind Squirrel Games needed to go further when it came to upgrading these older titles. Kicking off B tier, LEGO is practically its own genre in gaming, and this series got started back in 2005 with LEGO Star Wars. While at first it seemed like a simple kid-friendly title, its sheer popularity and the amount of properties that received the building block treatment speak for themselves. Over the years, multiple entries have added more and more content. LEGO Star Wars 2 focused on the original trilogy, and the complete saga brought together all 6 episodes in 2008, stacking on some more extras for good measure. For over 12 years, it's been one of the better Star Wars games available, with one of the biggest content pools, even if the core gameplay feels a bit outdated when compared to newer games in its series. Even with this release, LEGO Star Wars still isn't done. The ultimate culmination, and probably the last release we'll see from this property, is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which is set to arrive in 2022. Slinking in alongside Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank, the Sly Cooper games delivered some stylised stealth platforming that put Sucker Punch Productions on the map. Despite the property being less popular, the Sly Collection is easily the best of the PlayStation mascot compilations. It ties up the 3D platformers in one fully featured set, sitting above its contemporaries with a conversion that's better optimised for the PlayStation 3. All 3 games have been upscaled to a higher resolution, with a collection of mini-games added for good measure. Throw in an added bonus for completing all 3 games 100% and you've got a strong offering. Another solid effort in B tier comes from Devil May Cry. Featuring the first 3 games in the series, the HD collection brings Dante over to newer hardware. It was developed by Pipeworks Software and Double Helix Games, who successfully migrated the early titles over to more recent systems. The staying power of the trilogy led to the collection being ported over to 8th generation systems in recent years. Keeping the action flowing in these games is a must, and on all platforms the HD upgrades delivered pulse-pounding action without a single drop in performance. While Devil May Cry 2 is the weakest of the bunch, having these games so easily accessible is a worthy accomplishment in itself. Devil May Cry 1 and 3 are still highly regarded to this day thanks to their challenging difficulty and over-the-top style. Anyone looking to jump into the series for the first time can start here. The most recent entry to make the list, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, arrived earlier this year, seemingly an attempt to wash out the bad taste of Mass Effect Andromeda and bring the community back on side. For what it's worth, this trilogy re-release is a strong effort and by far the best way for newcomers to get into the series. It includes every piece of DLC, with the exception of Pinnacle Station, and bolts on a few graphical options. It's not a huge improvement on the original games, and the multiplayer from Mass Effect 3 didn't make the cut, but otherwise this compilation is well done. It will soon serve a prelude for BioWare's upcoming Mass Effect sequel, one that picks up where this trilogy left off. Nostalgia is a powerful force, and starting off A tier are Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Both of these are grouped together because of how similar they are. The two mascots cultivated big fan bases back in the day, and they had fallen off the grid in the 2010s. Leaping across 3 console generations, Crash and Spyro received dazzling visual upgrades that really bring their worlds to life. All 6 games look fantastic on newer systems, packing a ton of detail and charm into their environments and characters. The Insane and Reignited trilogies do have their quirks when it comes to controls and overall feel, but all told, these collections were made with a ton of passion. When it comes to retro franchises, few have achieved as large a fan base as Mega Man, and over the years the 2D series has seen several compilation packs: the Wily Wars in 1994, Rockman Complete Collection in Japan, and the Anniversary Collection in 2004. For this ranking though, I'm choosing the more recent and comprehensive Legacy Collection. Released across 2 parts in 2016 and 2017, the 2 packs comprise every classic with some additional time trial content. Part 1 contains the first 6 Mega Man titles, and Part 2 has 7 through to 10. That's the only issue with the overall package, as it would have been straightforward to put all 10 entries in a single package. Luckily, the Nintendo Switch version fixed this in 2018. As far as flagship franchises go, Uncharted has been a key fixture of Sony hardware for years. The simple tale of one treasure hunter's quest for riches has resulted in some of the most extravagant set pieces you can find. In the lead up to the 4th and final mainline entry, Bluepoint Games put out the Nathan Drake Collection. Featuring the original PS3 Trilogy upgraded for its successor, each entry boasts 60 frames per second and a higher level of detail. With this set being given away for free on PlayStation 4 earlier this year, there's no excuse not to get into the beloved series. It's unfortunate then that the surprisingly brilliant multiplayer components didn't receive the same conversion. This is the only blemish on an otherwise great compilation. Trading one exclusive IP for another, we come to Halo, the Master Chief Collection. Now, before you start typing in the comments, yes, Halo MCC was a broken mess at launch, and this keeps it from breaking into S tier. Over 6 years later, it has been massively improved, and now stands as one of the finest bundles out there. Initially, the package included Halos 1 through 4, with Reach and ODST added in recent years. Thanks to visual enhancements and full inclusion of the online components, players have a definitive means to experience the venerable series without having to rely on older copies or lowered player bases. The MCC goes hand in hand with Microsoft's focus on accessibility, and the game has been warmly received by the PC community. It's sure to whet people's appetites for the upcoming Halo Infinite. Standing at a stark contrast to Super Mario 3D AllStars, Metroid received far better treatment. The 3D outings, created by Retro Studios, were met with considerable acclaim on both the GameCube and Wii. When Metroid Prime 3 Corruption arrived, there was ample opportunity to bring the 3 games together. Metroid Prime Trilogy, which came out in 2009, is unique in how it retools the controls of all 3 games, upscales the graphics to widescreen, and stacks on some extra goods. The pointer control substantially upgraded the core action, delivering pinpoint accuracy when taking on enemies. By unifying a wildly popular trilogy, this collection inches very close to elite status. Now we come to the best of the best. As Gearbox's flagship franchise, Borderlands and its brand of looting and shooting has achieved much over the last decade. Simultaneously, the series is all over the place when it comes to content. Borderlands: The Handsome Collection rectified this in a big way. It contains 3 titles and all of their respective content packs. Borderlands, Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel are all massive games in their own right, but the value doesn't stop there. There's also full split screen for 4 players on console, maximising the IP's biggest strength. Cooperative play was always the central feature of Borderlands, but over time the player base was divided up by both different hardware and the many DLC packs for both games. The Handsome Collection brings it all together in one comprehensive package. Another PlayStation titan to make the list, God of War has offered continuous thrills across 3 console generations so far. With Ragnarok on the way for PS5, what better way to experience the series than the God of War saga? This monster of a collection contains all 5 games in the original series, from its 2005 debut all the way to Ascension on the PS3. The only problem with God of War Saga? It was never distributed outside of North America. While some versions of the PS3 don't have region restrictions, it's baffling that international audiences have to stick with either the HD or Origin collections. This compilation is by far the best way for new players to get into the older entries, many of which still hold up to this day. Next, we come to Hideo Kojima's best known property. Metal Gear Solid is a long-running series with countless entries over a 30-year period. The long-running story spans multiple console generations and time periods, making it tricky to keep track of every entry. In 2013, a full game set up to that point arrived on the PlayStation 3. The Legacy Collection includes 5 games from MGS1 on the PlayStation all the way through to Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation 3. That's a lot of stealth action packed onto 2 discs and a digital download, making it a near essential purchase for fans of the genre. Like the God of War Saga, the Legacy Collection is exclusive to the US, meaning most will stick to the HD collection from Bluepoint Games. It's a solid effort, but having the entire series up to that point at your fingertips is much better. To finish, we come to an older classic, one that set the blueprints for how compilations should be. The Orange Box is easily the greatest compilation in gaming history because it offered an experience for every type of gamer at a great price to boot. With multiple bestsellers under their belt, Valve sought to bring their catalogue together in a big way in 2007. 5 games in one package, it was the best deal in the industry at the time. Fans new and old could jump into the Half-Life series with one of the finest FPS titles ever made alongside its 2 expansions. Casual players got into Portal, itself a smashing new IP, and Team Fortress 2 launched an outstanding multiplayer component that's still running over 13 years later. This kind of package is generally reserved for digital sales. The Orange Box was in a class of its own in the 7th generation. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first crack at a tier list. Maybe I'll do the same for video game remakes considering how popular they've become in recent years. As always, you can follow my blog and channel at the links in the description.